first, we're going to hear from the Prime Minister about his assessment of the current situation inside Ukraine and the support from the Western allies. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Бажаю всім міцного здоров'я, шановні панове президенти.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear presidents, prime ministers, ministers, Mr. Chairperson of the Supreme Council of Ukraine, Verkhovna Rada, dear partners, our defenders, ladies and gentlemen. 20 years, the Yalta European strategy is one of the most efficient and best spaces for discussion. Thank you, dear Mr. Pinchuk, for the fact that 20 years ago you have started these discussions. 20 years later, we are conducting legally the talks. Thank you, the team who are keeping up to standards, and we thus may discuss our international aspects. 932 days or 2 years, more than 2 years, Ukraine's been waging the war for our survival, for us to live in a civilized European country, but there is another date, 3,859 days since Crimea and Sevastopol were occupied. And in reality, this is the starting point of our war for our survival and our independence. It is very important to understand and talk about this, what our victory means for us and our partners. We don't have any doubt that we shall win, and we will win. Every Ukrainian has the understanding in their hearts what our victory means for us. So today, during our discussion, we will talk about this. We talked with Mr. Pinchuk. One of the panels will be devoted to this, and we will speak from our heart about this. But there are some pragmatic things, very pragmatic things, what the Ukrainian victory means for the Europe, for the free world. Let's talk about this. This is about our future, about the future of the world. Ukraine is making an immense contribution to this, and the victory for Ukraine, for Europe, the victory for the free world, and the victory for our state means very simple and pragmatic things which may be understood for everyone, by everyone. But let's talk about them. The most powerful army on the continent, almost 1 million veterans, one of the most powerful defense and industrial complex, which grows manifold every year, almost 2 million drones. We may produce and ammunition for them, dozens of artillery pieces of NATO and European models, contracts for missiles, for defense technology, for projectiles. Ukraine is doing and making all this. We stake on innovations. Of course, we will become a huge systemic, maybe a foundation or a component of the European market for arms, for weapons. Ukraine is the factor of the future security in Ukraine, in Europe, and in the world. I have no doubt about this. Ukraine is the reserve of critical infrastructure for free Europe, for free world. 21. The element 21 of the 30 components or elements of European security are in Ukraine. Nickel and cobalt and other ores and minerals are in Ukraine, critical for the world, and this is one of the factors why Russia has launched its aggression. We are realizing and we are prepared to implement different projects, and we are prepared to go green, and we are doing this. Our energy sector is another factor which is important for us and for the civilized Europe. We are very fast in this. And the freshest report on the competitiveness in Ukraine with the foreword of Mario Draghi, the former Prime Minister of Italy and the former chairperson of the European Central Bank, says that European competitiveness without Ukraine will become lower. That's why Europe is interested in Ukraine no less than Ukraine is interested in Europe. This is a geopolitical decisive factor that we have to take into account today, and all those pragmatic things that I'm enumerating and that we will be discussing are critically decisive for Europe from the point of view of global competitiveness and global survival. European business wants to protect their added value, wants to move production closer to the market, and in this respect, Ukraine is the most promising space. We have the structure, we have human capital, we're neighbors, and we are future members. In the very near future, members of the EU, we are able to become the production factory of Europe. We have seaports, we have production. During the war, we have developed our river ports on the Danube. Our roads are part of the European network. We are building European standard railways. And in the future, this will cover the entire Ukraine from Kharkiv to Lisbon. We're talking to our Baltic states about Rail Baltic, which will unite the Baltic and the Black Sea. These are the changes of the horizontal infrastructure and logistics between Ukraine and the East. We are going also to speak about north to south logistics, and we are prepared to implement the vertical logistics in our state, in our nation. Ukraine has been and will be the guarantor of food security in the world. We've been providing something like 25% of corn, 10% of wheat, and over 25% of sunflower oil. The potential of our agricultural production is almost 200 million tons, which will allow us to almost double the international export. However, these are not frightful figures for European farmers, European producers. You have to realize that this means more security for Europe. This provides us with an opportunity, possibility to feed 600 million people in the world, and thus lower the immigration pressure. Ukraine is able to fill the needs of the European Union where albumin cultures are concerned, meat and other foodstuff. We also stake on processing. We don't want to be a raw material country. We will create the chains of added value, or rather we will take part in the world and European chains. We want in the future process more than 50% of the crops. Rebuilding of Ukraine is another important factor. We will be united with our partners with the greatest investment project of rebuilding Ukraine after our victory. We have to understand this. It's important to make our partners understand that 486 billion investment is very much needed. We understand that after the liberation of the entire territory of Ukraine, the opportunities for the business of our partners will become even more. And this also concerns the extraction of natural resources and processing. These all are very pragmatic things. Today we are conducting reforms despite the war, and we are creating a very favorable environment for Ukrainian business and for the business of our partners. We are given green light to projects with huge investment. We understand that the energy sector is priority. You talked about this yesterday in detail. I won't go into detail here. However, of course, there's a question about how we live through the next winter, but this is for other discussions. Dwellings for people should be restored. Agrarian sector, demining, and our territories are now the most contaminated in the world. However, we are doing everything possible to be the fastest in demining. We understand the preconditions. This is the solidarity of the entire civilized world during this world. The staunchness of Ukraine, our restoration. The second factor is the return of Ukrainians from the front.
Primarily bringing Ukrainians back from abroad, and we are ready to cooperate with our partners in terms of creating new jobs and housing programs, receiving Ukrainians from foreign countries. We're thankful to our partners for hosting our refugees, but victory will bring the time when our women and our children, our people will have to come back to Ukraine, and for that we will obviously need financial programs, which our partners should think about. Now, probably we should introduce multiple citizenship, and I will be thankful to our partners if we move forward towards this innovation, which is very important for our country as a prospective member of the EU. And the third factor for our victory and our security is the need for armaments and more sanctions against Russia. We have to seize and use Russian assets for Ukraine. We shouldn't be afraid of this and shouldn't draw any excessive red lines. We have to fully implement the peace formula drafted by our president and to force the aggressor to a just and fair peace. All this is necessary to implement all the plans that I mentioned before. Thank you for your attention, and glory to Ukraine.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister, for that rousing speech and for your acknowledgements about some of both the challenges that await and also your determination to try and unfold policies to meet them. We have a lot to talk about, but I would like to start by asking you for some reaction to the news, or rather the lack of news overnight from Washington, where Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, was meeting with Joe Biden, and there were hopes that there would be announcements about the unrestricted use of long-range missiles. That announcement did not come. Are you disappointed that we have not yet had clear signals from the US and the UK that you will have permission to strike inside Russian territory. How much of a disappointment is that, and how serious will it be for Ukraine's efforts to defend itself?
During each of our meetings over the last few months and weeks, we have been raising that issue. Ukraine badly needs a permission to use those capabilities deep inside the territory of Russia. These things are obvious for ourselves, for our neighbors, for Europe, for people at large. We're talking about preventive strikes to save the lives of our children, of our families, of Ukrainians. This is not even that much about military strategy. This is about morality and values of human lives that Russia erases every day. We see repeated strikes against the critical infrastructure and the civilian objects, and that happens throughout the territory of Ukraine, all the way from Kharkiv to Lviv. And unfortunately, the only way to stop that is our possibility to use the partners' weapons for preventive strikes against military capabilities of Russia. Yesterday, we heard very important words from our president. We can't afford losing time, wasting time, because time is about the lives of Ukrainians. And unlike our partners who unwaveringly support us all this time, we are paying for this with our lives. And any political discussion around this issue, whether to do this or not to do this, to allow this or not to allow this, only raises the price for the Ukrainian people and claims more lives of our children. Obviously, this is very painful for us, and we will insistently ask for this. A lot of people support this initiative, but now the ball is in the court of those who are responsible for the use of this very important military capabilities for us.
That the announcement did not come overnight as people had hoped. Are you hopeful that you will get an announcement during the UN General Assembly meeting that you will be able to use the missiles inside Russia?
We will spare no effort to make this happen. Of course, we're interested to have this happen as soon as possible. We invest all possible political efforts into this, and we ask all our partners to support this. Well, unfortunately, there's some pressure on decision makers in that respect.
We have a large delegation of American parliamentarians who have arrived today. We've also got British parliamentarians here as well. One of the things that I have heard in Washington a lot in recent weeks is that it is now impossible for Ukraine to clear Russia out of the east of Ukraine, and it is time to negotiate, to do some kind of land swap for peace. I've heard that a lot in Washington. What would you say to that? Do you think it's time to recognize that Ukraine cannot regain its eastern territories and it's time to negotiate?
Well, it's always better to make a deal than to lose lives. But unfortunately, the terrorists and the aggressor that we are fighting against today is not capable of any honest deeds. We have 10 years and several months of that experience, and We understand full well that we can negotiate peace only around a large-scale table and only through the implementation of the Ukrainian peace formula. We cannot allow trading territories for peace or freezing the conflict for peace. This is totally unacceptable for us and our society. We will keep on fighting, and the entire history of the world shows that those who fight for justice and for their dignity always prevail, no matter how formidable your enemy is. We are sure that victory will be ours, and this is something we are going to fight for with the support of our partners until we fully free and liberate our territories and our people. This is what lasting and durable peace and the restoration of the world order means for us.
Of course, you yourself mentioned the energy situation and the fact that Russian forces have knocked out now over half of the energy production in Ukraine is one factor that's leading many people to ask what will happen this winter. And already there are stories of many Ukrainians preparing to leave Ukraine in case the winter is bad and there won't be enough electricity for heating. How concerned are you about an exodus of Ukrainians this winter? How will that affect morale? And what can be done, if anything, to try and restore that energy supply to at least a minimal level?
I have no doubts about our resilience and our morale. And the numbers that I gave at the beginning of my presentation and the years of our fight against the aggressor show that we are ready to fight. We have been through 3 very tough winters already. We know how to meet this challenge. We are getting ready for this heating season. We have the support of our partners, and we are sure that this support will be throughout the winter period. We are getting ready. We have all proper equipment, and I'm sure that we will go through this winter the way we did during previous winters. I would like to thank our energy workers for standing fast at this front line, and they recover the energy systems. We decentralized our energy systems, and we are really going ahead with the green transition. So for all the tragedies and terror that Russia commits, the ruin of the energy sector in Ukraine, the environmental disasters, the blowing up of the Kakhovka Dam, the risk of accidents at Zaporizhia NPP, and the more than half NPPs affected by this. All this adds up to a real energy terror against us, but at the same time we go ahead with alternative energy production and a decentralization of the energy system, which provides people with electricity not from large-scale hubs, but from individual small-scale energy origins. We go green. We have a strategy for the development of our nuclear energy, and this is our contribution to the green transition of the European continent, and we will continue doing this, and this is something which is definitely help us survive. I will remind you that last winter we managed to live off our domestic gas reserves, and all these factors make us confident that we will go through this winter, no matter how tough it is, no matter how treacherous Russia is.
Well, certainly the history of Ukraine shows that Ukrainian people have extraordinary resilience. And, I would join you in commending all of those who are fighting to restore the energy production. But on the issue of morale, you are also seeing amongst the population now a gradual reduction in confidence in the government. I mean, just to give you a polling result, in April 2022, 70% of Ukrainians still strongly or somewhat approved of the activities of the cabinet of ministers. In February 2024, that had dropped to 35%. Are you concerned about the loss or the decline in confidence in the cabinet at the moment amongst the population? And can you explain why there has just been the reshuffle of the government? Because many people overseas are asking why there has been this personnel change at such a delicate moment.
Well, as regards the dropping of trust, you quoted percentages, but do you have the same figures about the Western EU?
I can guarantee it's far worse in the West. I think we would be very grateful to have 35% confidence in anything right now. So, it's another area where Ukraine can contribute to Europe and the West positively.
As regards the personnel changes within the cabinet, our government is working in an environment of crisis, and with our colleagues, with prime ministers and presidents, even during the COVID times, we exchanged new experience of managing countries in crisis environment. And further on, after COVID, Ukraine was confronted with another challenge that no other cabinet faced ever after the Second World War. This job is very tough. It's not easier than the fight at the front line, where people lay down their lives to make sure that we can carry on working, to express our confidence to the government, in the government or the otherwise. But the work of the cabinet during the war is very tough. And as the president said, and I can reiterate that, not everyone can stand the strain of work 24/7 without any leaves, weekends, night sleep, under stress in the environment of contingencies. All these requirements, of course, require sometimes personnel changes to bring in some fresh force, fresh blood. Using military jargon, this is a rotation of people who work tirelessly day in and day out have to be rotated.
Thus, we've rotated a part of the cabinet, and the newcomers are still members of the team. These are not the outsiders. These are the people with the sufficient experience who know how to manage crises. And we are extremely thankful to those who've been with us. They're still in the team, those who lost their positions, but they are not lost for the team, right? We will accumulate this knowledge and experience within the team.
Well, thank you very much indeed. As you say, it has been a very grueling time for the cabinet. It's taken a tremendous toll on everyone serving. I see that, the clock has just changed again, sorry. I will carry on then. I have one last question to ask then before we finish, which is that on a more positive note, one area that has actually delivered better than expected news in the last few months has been the economy. Inflation has fallen. The output has continued really quite impressively. The International Monetary Fund has signaled that it is impressed by how the economy has been resilient. Can you explain why the economy has done so much better than people had feared it might do?
The answer is very simple, and we've mentioned that already. That's the resilience of the Ukrainian people, the resilience of the Ukrainian businesses. In the very first months of the all-out war, we lost 50% of our economy. 50% of our GDP. We lost 3.5 million jobs. But in the second month, the Ukrainian businesses have resumed their operation, and the losses of the first year of war was lower, 30% of the GDP drop and business loss. Today, we are speaking about development. We work hand in glove with our businesses, we support SMEs, we create new jobs, businesses are paying taxes. But we are prepared to do even more, and we are thankful to the Ukrainian businesses, to their CEOs and owners. We are thankful to the veterans who, upon returning from the front line, create their own businesses, which is a catalyst of the national recovery. Another important factor is the support of our partners that helped us to cope with the microfinancial resilience, and that's an unprecedented practice for the countries of IMF. And special instruments were used to support Ukrainian economy, and we treasure this support on the part of our partners. We are extremely thankful to the Ukrainian businesses and our partners, international partners, for this assistance.
Are you concerned, and I think we still have just a little bit more time, are you concerned that increasing mobilization will undermine the economic output? Because, of course, there are discussions about the fact that there will need to be another large mobilization in the coming months if the military strength is going to be maintained.
We are working very actively to ensure this balance, a very fine balance, and it is a very important question for the Ukrainian society. Thank you for it. We are working again in coordination with the armed forces of Ukraine. We understand that mobilization is about our survival, and businesses appreciate that. And the support of this balance requires good coordination amongst government, the armed forces, the private sector, and we will restore this deferment for businesses. And the principle should be either you fight or you work. In a country at war, there is no alternative. But for the population to be supportive of the country, either at the front line, paying this huge price with their lives, or working in their rear, making sure that the budget revenues flow in, and that the people at the front line are properly supported. So it is critical for our survival, for our victory. And I'm sure that we will continue in this very way. More than 900,000 people received this deferment from mobilization. We expect that this number might grow in the very near future, but we do our math, and we want to make sure that we mobilize as many or enlist as many men and women as necessary for the victory.
Well, thank you very much indeed. You said earlier that the cabinet jobs were a bit like military jobs in terms of requiring rotation and rest. You are one person who has not been rotated. You've been in place now for 4 years. I'm sure it's been an exhausting time. So I commend you on your own personal resilience. I commend you on all you are collectively doing to fight for Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed, and very best of luck. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I need to say that the work at the Cabinet of Ministers does not compare with what our people do at the front line. To me, it is kind of a benchmark. If somebody says that we are tired of the war, I usually say, ask people at the front line. Some of them have been there for 10 years, some for almost 3 years. Many are taking risks every day. Some have laid down their lives. So it should be a benchmark to all of us in public administration, in private business, in education, culture, etc. When we speak about fatigue, we are not fatigued as much as our people at the front line. Thank you very much for your attention, and glory to Ukraine.